So, Bob, you and I recorded some episodes 2-3 months ago, and for whatever reason, I put them in a folder and never looked in that folder again. So we're going to publish this episode now, but we recorded it in late September, early October.
Wow.
So if there's anything that we're talking about in the episode that references the time and space, everyone just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I apologize to everyone for being an old person where my neurons don't work as well as they used to. So let's get to that episode. What do you say, Bob?
Let's do it.
So, Bob, we still have all of those questions that people submitted on the survey. And also, I have something that I found on Reddit that I can't wait to talk with you about.
Oh, well. Huh.
But first, you're getting the new booster for COVID today.
Yes.
I got mine last week.
Ah.
At the same time, I got my flu vaccine. Apparently, that's okay to do. And I'm thinking, might as well do it at the same time.
Right.
And I felt great for the first day and night, but the next day, oof. But I wasn't sick. It was more like very, very tired.
Tired, yeah.
I slept a lot longer at night, and then I had this really long nap, and then about 24 hours later, I felt fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't feel sick or achy.
Yeah,
it was more just
right.
tired and wiped out, which means the stuff is working.
It's working. Your immune system is taking up some energy.
Yeah.
Burning some glucose.
Yeah. And the new booster has both the old variant, the original variant that they used in the original vaccine, apparently, and also the Omicron. So they have both. So it protects you against Omicron and the regular COVID variant. And I'm happy because the numbers are down in my county in terms of COVID infections, and my booster should kick in a week or so, and
that's right.
I'll be back to feeling invincible again.
Right on.
Yeah.
Mighty.
And I never got COVID. You never got COVID?
No, I got COVID.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Last August, July, something.
Oh, we must have talked about that. Maybe it's Berto hasn't had COVID. Anyway, so
Virgin.
On Reddit, on the subreddit therapists, there was a post today that I was so happy to read.
Wow.
And let me read some of the things, and then you can chime in interrupt if you want to.
Sure.
So here's how it starts. This is the original post. This Reddit poster, so referring to themselves as a third person.
Oh, sure.
This Reddit poster wants to know why you write your notes in the third person. He has always found this odd, but apparently he is in the minority on this. Some of his colleagues have told him that he should never use I in his notes. The therapist can't find anything that indicates there is a regulatory requirement for this. And then a bunch of other people chimed in.
Yeah.
And the next person says, so they're referring to themselves in third person. Writer finds this practice odd as well, but it makes it sound official, which only feeds the imposter syndrome. So writer does it mostly out of masochism. My original hypothesis, based on no data, really, just based on my gauge of humans and the people who do this sort of thing, the only hypothesis I had as to why people would do this, because I couldn't think of any regulation or ethical code or professional practice. I couldn't think of any possible reason why you would do this. The only thing I could think of was that it was because people are trying to sound more professional because they hate themselves and they have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that was the only thing I could think of as to why someone would do that. Uh-huh. And I based that on the fact that the people that did it and the people that proposed to do it were novice therapists who I gauged to have pretty low confidence as a clinician. And also, I feel like I'm pretty tapped into the ethical codes and the professionalism standards and what you can get sued for and what notes are used for and everything. And I'm just like, there is no reason why you couldn't say as a therapist in your progress notes, my client said this to me, blah, 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 blah. I used the following intervention and she said da, 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 da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because everyone knows it's you that's writing the note and you're signing the note. So why do you have to, and I've said this before, that when you say therapist did to client, it's unclear that it's you, because you could actually literally be referring to another therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, So then
I think it comes out of the medical field, though. This is a straight shot right out of the medical field, as I understand it. And those folks write in this way that's like clinical, like to distance. I think it's a way to distance. I think it has a psychological function of distancing from in medical terms, the patient. The doctor wants to distance from the patient, so they want to treat the patient like a lump of flesh that needs, an injection or whatever, whatever. I don't get it. I don't think it's good. It's stupid. It's needless. And it probably comes out of a time when writing was more formal.
That's true. And some people mention that in the thread.
Though I don't see any reason they can't use first person singular.
Right.
There's no clinical benefit.
Yeah. It just sounds more official.
Does it sound official? It sounds dickish and distancing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is official.
Oh, official.
I
could not work for the government.
Yeah. So let me go through other things that people said. This is another person. This is how she was taught to do it too, and she cannot explain why.
Yep.
So many people were responding like, yeah, I was taught this too. I don't know why I was taught to do this.
Right.
If you're taught to do something and you don't know why, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like, you should heavily question why you're doing things that way. And now, it probably doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
But if, for example, you're taught, we were talking about this recently, you and I, about how we're taught that you shouldn't have two therapists working with the same client.
Right.
If you're operating from that rule and you ask yourself, why was I taught that? And you cannot answer that question, then you have a problem on your hands. Because one, it might not hold any water. And two, if you don't understand the reason behind the rule, then you can't really apply it in a careful way, in a way that's responsible. Because you might apply it in situations where it doesn't make any sense, right? There's a reason behind it. And there's a lot of things that therapists do. Anyway, and I think maybe that's why I rail on this so much, because if this was the only time that this sort of thing happens in our field, where I saw a lot of therapists following a rule blindly that makes no sense, then I probably wouldn't notice it. But this happens all the time. People will say, you can never ask a client why. You can never...
Oh, yeah, I got that one.
Yeah. You can't cross your legs as a therapist. You can't accept gifts from a therapist or from a client.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you don't want to, but it's not a hard and fast rule. When you understand the reason behind the gift subject.
I have a beautiful watercolor painting given to me by a client 25 years ago. It's on my wall. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, tell me the story of
that. Somebody that I worked with early in my career, really nice man.
Client.
Yeah. Amazing artist, like just supreme control. When people walk into my office and they see it, they think it's a photograph. It's so photorealistic. And with watercolor, like I said to him, that's really hard to do. He's like, yeah, I know. That's why I chose this medium, because it's really hard to control watercolor paint. But he's a master, and
he must have really sharp paintbrushes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very, very fine, double aught, whatever.
So what's the scene?
It's a woman sitting in a woven chair, she has a large back woven chair, like a woven thing, like on somebody's back patio or something. And she's just sitting there, gazing off to one side. And he's like, yeah, I was going to give you a nude, but I didn't figure you could hang that. And then this nice man.
So he just shows up to session.
And he gives me the watercolor.
And you didn't know it was happening.
No.
So all of a sudden, what went through your mind? Did you think, ooh, should I not accept this? Or what?
I thought, boy, I really like that. I hope I'm keeping it. And I said that to my supervisor. I'm like, I really like it. I want to keep it. And she's like, yeah, I totally get it. And it was his way of expressing gratitude for the work that we did.
How long had you been working together?
A couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intense relationship?
Yeah. And a really nice man. We went through some bumps together, but we went through them together. And when we got done, we were together still. I think that's part of the point. And then when I left that job, towards the end of my time there, but he gave it to me unframed. And I didn't have any money. So he's like, well, you can get a pretty cheap frame here. This is how you do it. And da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, great. And I still didn't have any money. And week went by. Did you get that thing framed? No. Did you get that thing framed? No. Finally, he's like, give it back to me and I will get it framed. He did. He got it framed. It's still in the frame that he gave me in beautiful maroon color matte. And
so was there ever a question in your mind with you and your supervisor that it would be unethical to accept the gift?
The thing we talked about was it would be absolutely rude not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he could probably sell it for a good amount of money. He's, it's part of his, work life is that he makes art, and but he wanted me to have it. And, if that happened with like a lot of clients, I'd start questioning, what am I doing here? But it's a one-off. It's a, rare thing. And it seemed it would have been absolutely impolite and unnecessary to turn him down.
Now, if he handed you like a check for $500 as a gift,
I would have had to turn that down.
Right. That's easier to turn down.
I did accept one tip one time.
Really?
Yes.
What was that?
It was $40, and it was a person who grew up in another country where tipping was a big part of their culture, and I did not want cash. I did not want that. But to have turned her down would have been really rude. So I didn't turn her down, but
So it was cash?
It was $40.
So how did she present it?
She said she gave it to me in an envelope. She said, this is like I don't know if she called it a Christmas present or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's not, we don't usually take tips here. And she described, where she grew up, and
Where can you say where it was, or?
Yeah, Singapore.
Singapore.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about Singapore. But she said, this is what we do. So I accepted it very uncomfortably, but graciously, because, my discomfort doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So I was gracious about it, and I said, thank you very much. And
was this when you worked at the agency?
No.
This is in private practice.
Can you believe it? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different when you work in an agency because you're not being paid shit. So if you get a little bit of extra scratch, it means something. With private practice, things are usually a little bit more lucrative.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, the rule of just like it's unethical to accept gifts. If you ask the general population of our industry, there'd be a good percentage that would say what you did was unethical. And you could lose your license, or you could be shamed. You could be Game of Thrones style walked through the streets of King's Landing while a nun with a bell behind you yells shame at you.
And vegetables and so forth.
That's just, and so saying things in the third person in your notes is just kind of along those lines. So going on with other people's responses here.
Right on.
So this person's like, no idea why I do this, but I've been a client who has read my own notes, and I felt more like a human when I read notes from a psychiatrist who wrote using I and my name instead of, psychiatrist and patient. So that's another thing to think about, right? That for the client, they feel distanced and dehumanized when it's worded that way, which isn't a big deal because the vast majority of clients will never read their notes. But another person, I got used to writing this way from APA formatting, which never uses the first person. I just assumed it was for professionalism reasons. Okay, so Bob, it is not APA format to never say first person. You can use first person in APA format when it calls for it. When you are publishing in a journal, maybe not, right? But you can. It's not unheard of, especially when it calls for it. If you're doing a phenomenological study and you're publishing in a reputable journal, and and you're the sole author, and the issue comes up regarding something that impacted you, like in some phenomenological study methods, you utilize your own thought process, your own feelings, your own reactivity, your own bias, or whatever. And there are different conventions. Some people will say the author, but some people will say I, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're going to get rejected from the APA police. Also, when you're writing notes, that's not APA formatted. It is the farthest thing you could possibly get from an APA formatted paper or manuscript. It's a fucking progress note. So so then another person says, no idea why, but that's what I was taught.
Yeah.
Another person, there isn't a regulatory requirement for it, but I was trained the same way. I refer to my client as client, myself as psychologist when I refer to myself at all. Don't really know why. It's pretty much just a habit at this point.
Yeah.
Another person, I went to a short training on documentation that was run by a person who was both a lawyer and had clinical training. Using third person probably creates some psychological distance so that triggering or tense topics can be handled a little bit more objectively. So that's the first thing in here where I'm like, okay, I could see that.
That's a reason?
I mean, that's a reason. It's not ridiculous, but certainly not necessary. Like if that's what you're relying on.
Like, why do we want to create distance?
Right. Another is notes are primarily for being read by third parties, so it needs to be in third person. It's a record for treatment that can be subpoenaed. So this is another reason that I can get behind, kind of. I don't think it's a slam dunk reason, but for example, if you're passing around a client file, it might be helpful if it's in that third person so that as people are reading it, they're reading about the therapist and the client instead of me and her and that kind of thing. But it's certainly not necessary because, again, when there's a signature at the bottom, it's clear who the I is in this statement. All right. Another person says, I never do that. I can't stand it. So that person is my favorite.
Right on.
And then the last person that says, I like it. I struggle with imposter syndrome, so being able to write in the third person validates the legitimacy of my notes. I'm not saying that's the best or the only reason, though. All right. So that one really typifies why I think this gets perpetuated in our culture.
Sure.
When you feel like an imposter, you will do a lot of things to try to avoid feeling like an imposter or coming across like an imposter. And if every lemming is walking into the sea, then you walk into the sea because you just don't want to step out of line. And again, if you write notes in the way that I don't like, it probably will have zero effect. But it's a stand-in as a sharp example of the amount of bullshit in my industry that therapists follow and teach and perpetuate that actually do cause harm to clients. This rigid non-gift acceptance thing, the rigid way that people will say, I can't tell you how many times, and on this subreddit, which is populated by clinicians, that people will say you're not supposed to self-disclose. There is no evidence, and I don't think I've ever read in a single textbook that was written by a reputable author that says you're not supposed to self-disclose. Where do they get that notion? Because idiots are teaching that to, people who don't know better. And I think it's for this reason. When you feel like an imposter, when you feel like you don't know what you're doing, when you feel like you are unprofessional, anything that comes across in your mind as being associated with being unprofessional is going to alert everyone that you don't know what you're doing. And I think self-disclosure feels that way to people. It feels unprofessional, right? It feels like you're a hack or that you're not a real therapist or something. And it's like, it couldn't be further from the truth. Self-disclosure is one of the 8 pillars of good treatment. It should be used sparingly and strategically and briefly and responsibly, but it's an incredibly important element in empirical outcomes in therapy. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but you're leaving a tool unused in the tool chest. You know what I mean? By the way, how's your tool chest going?
Oh, well, it works. That's all I can say about it. I have a very small TV hooked up to it. So I was to go out in my garage and turn on the TV and watch football or golf or something and, dink around, and whatever I'm working on. Yeah, it's very convenient. It's like one-stop shopping. It's very, I like it. I like it for that. Yeah.
God, you're a grandpa.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, get out of my driveway. Damn kids, get off my lawn.
There aren't any kids in your neighborhood, are there?
Yeah, there's a couple across the street. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have 5. Oh, they're all girls, too. Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. And
one of them got her hair cut recently. She had this long, dark brown hair, and she popped out of their house one day when I was getting the mail. They have the same mailbox next to ours. She popped out, and she'd got her hair cut really short. And I just looked at her, I'm like, your hair looks beautiful. And I don't even know this kid's name. She got this big smile on her face. I was really glad to, because that's a pretty big deal, get all your hair cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break and get to listener questions after that.
Yep.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do an OPP, Bob, of people who became patrons a while back and have stayed patrons through thick and thin. We have, by the way, I want to promote annual patronage. If people want to become annual patrons,
I am an annual patron.
That's great. So these people became patrons in June of 2020.
Wow.
We have Christine, and we have Jolyn and Anne and Gabby and Christopher and Jenny and Kelly from God knows where. We have Jen from Victorville, California. Cam from East Northport, New York. Anna from AT. What country is AT, do you think?
Austria?
By the way, I've been saying that some people are from Czechoslovakia, and Czechoslovakia hasn't existed since the 80s.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that. Austria, you were right. Did you say Austria?
I did.
Awesome. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Katie from Chicago. Mandy from Fenton, Missouri. Loving the Rain from Maryville, Indiana. Dita from Czech Republic. Hello. Not Czechoslovakia, because that hasn't existed since Reagan era. Natalie from London. Jen from Chantilly, Virginia. Chantilly Lace? Is that a song?
Chantilly.
Chantilly. Starry Girl from Boise. Stephanie from Douglasville, Pennsylvania.
I don't know.
Do you know where that is?
No.
Kate from Lehigh, Utah. Natalie from NL.
Netherlands.
Yes.
Oh.
Duh. You're better than Google. You're faster than Google.
Wow.
Alexandra from Vancouver, BC, and Kristen from Panama City, Florida. Hopefully you're doing okay after the hurricane.
Wow.
Thank you so much for becoming patrons, y'all, and staying patrons through thick and thin. Really, I and Bob and the rest of us really depend. This podcaster really depends on the patrons. I'm referring to myself in the third person. All right. So Maria from Washington says, I don't have the resources or time to go back to school for a master's program. I don't have the resources or the time to go back to school for a master's program. Okay. But I find myself more and more interested in psychology and really drawn to helping people. Are there avenues such as volunteer programs or shorter certification I could get with my current bachelor degree? Are there avenues such as volunteer programs or shorter certification I could get with my current bachelor degree? Bob, what do you think?
You can work in the mental health field with a bachelor's degree, doing like case management. You could do that. You could become a life coach. I think they have less. It's cheaper than I think and faster than getting a master's degree, though I actually don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything to become a life coach.
You should do something.
No, but you don't have to.
You don't have to. But as Sandra Lippincott said, training will not make a bad therapist good, but it will make a good therapist better. So it's in your interest to get training.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So life coaching. There's also chemical dependency treatment.
Oh, that's right.
Which is getting more and more professionalized and more involved. But
some of that's pretty rigorous, the training.
Yeah, more so than it used to be, but not as much as a master's degree.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's also paraprofessionals, which are people who assist therapists in the field.
Yeah.
Some communities have those job available openings. You could work at a treatment facility as a tech, or you could work in a psychiatric hospital as a tech, I suppose.
Yeah, I did that. That was interesting.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the fastest way, which didn't occur to me, is coaching, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things you can do to help people.
Yeah.
With the coaching profession-ish, I guess. But you got to make sure that for your client's sake that you know when to refer, what the line is. So there's a lot you can do, but you could take those classes. Yeah. Anonymous says, I'm 30. The other thing I'll say is, Maria from Washington, is that you say you don't have the resources or time to go back to school. At Antioch, for example, you could. I'm more and more out of the loop, but in the past, and hopefully still now, you can go at your own pace, meaning that you could take like one class a quarter. So the time issue can be helped in that way.
Yeah.
And then in terms of resources, there are student loans. And then the idea is that post-grad, you can earn enough money to pay it off if you keep your eye on the ball and make sure your career goes in a direction that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a risk, and it's certainly not without its problems. And once you get to internship, that is a part-time job.
It is.
Anonymous says, I'm 34, and a few years ago, I started having memories of being sexually abused by my father when I was 4-ish, by the way, trigger abuse. Trigger warning. I'm 34, And a few years ago, I started having memories of being sexually abused by my father when I was 4. I still have a relationship with him, which can be confusing and overwhelming at times, though I also care about him. A few years ago, he asked me if I had ever been sexually abused. I've been struggling with my mental health, and he, I guess, was trying to figure out why. He said, "I just don't understand why you have had such a hard time. I've been racking my brain to see if something ever happened. Were you ever sexually abused? Were you ever sexually abused?" And she goes on to say, "It's so weird. I'm curious what you and Bob think given those few details. Thank you so much. I've benefited greatly from listening to all of you." So Bob, what do you think?
Is the question, should she bring it up with her dad?
I don't know. Maybe, but also, does she, I don't know. I guess generally, what should she do?
Well, you could bring it up with your dad, I suppose. There's pros and cons to any choice you make. It's likely to cause conflict or, strife of some kind or other. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess the question is how do you imagine it would make you feel if you did? Because it sounds like if I'm reading this thing right or hearing it right, it sounds like that's what's on her mind is, should I talk about this with my dad or an impulse or an urge to do so, to talk about it, to kind of get the cards on the table, given that dad asked about it specifically. So, kind of wondering, my thought was, I wonder if he would deny it if you brought it up, or what would happen really. So I don't know. What do you think?
I would recommend, Anonymous, that you have oversight with a therapist on this week to week, because there's so many contingencies to account for and to adjust for, mainly from you, Anonymous, because, if you aren't treated and you have PTSD, which I don't know either of those, then walking into the storm is dangerous for you. So that would be the first recommendation. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, what's the goal, I think, is what Bob was getting at. Like, what, if you bring it up with him, what are you hoping to happen? Because it's probable that he's going to deny it. It's also slightly possible that your memories are not accurate, because memories at the age of 4 are not super accurate, although when you state it the way you do, it sounds like credible. It sounds credible. I started having memories of being sexually abused by my father when I was 4. So, that sounds like solid, credible, reliable memories, but it's possible that they're not. It's possible that your dad has gone into denial about it. It's possible that your dad doesn't see it as sexual abuse. It's possible that your dad knows he sexually abused you and is actually in this weird way for asking if you remember it, and thus sort of trying to gauge that, or maybe even trying to apologize on some level.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, but I would get a therapist. Good old Smellanita says, when did you notice toxic masculinity? When were you first aware of it and chose not to identify with it? So toxic masculinity being bad aspects of masculinity.
Yeah. I still notice it.
And when was the first time, though? What age do you think?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'd like to say it's not that long ago. Not because I think I've been going through life,
Well, when you were a teenager, do you remember feeling pressure to be a certain way as a man or a 20-something, and you thought, I'm not going to ascribe to that aspect of masculinity?
I remember a lot of homophobia on the dorm room floor where I lived when I was 19 when I went to college, and 19, 20, 21 that time. And I was definitely not going to subscribe to that.
Did you feel pressure?
Oh, hell yeah.
As a man?
Oh, as a man.
Not as a human in our society, but particularly as a man?
No, I can't say it was because I was a man that I felt pressure. I think it was just because I wasn't willing to be a homophobe.
Okay. Because, there is an element of toxic masculinity that's
tied to
homophobia.
Right.
Homophobic, yeah.
No, I didn't. I'm just remembering that time. I got more shit for not being willing to go along than two of the guys who lived on the floor were gay.
I need a visual. So there's many different types of dorm floors.
Sure.
Is this an classic long hallway?
Long hallway.
Rooms on the side?
either side, both doubles.
Every as a
Every
double,
room,
and then maybe
everybody
like there's a living room every once in a while.
No living room.
Oh, so
Yeah.
this building was built like in the 40s. Or
Oh
something.
yeah, this is old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many people was there an RA on the floor?
Yeah. It was split into wings. There were probably 30 or so guys on each wing.
So you got to know in your freshman year these
Maybe
30
40.
guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe drink together, that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Hang out. Yeah. Just play a lot of basketball.
So how did it play out with the homophobic pressure?
For some reason, one of the guys started just getting on this thing where he was making a lot of like jokes or, gay jokes or whatever. I don't know. And I didn't like him. He was, I don't know, whatever. And it sort of just drew other people in. I think it's Pennsylvania. It's rural. There's a lot of well, it doesn't have to be rural for there to be homophobia.
This is Penn State.
Yeah, this is at Penn State. Yeah.
That's in a rural town?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, but I wasn't willing to go along. So at first I just, I didn't do anything. I didn't keep my mouth shut. I didn't laugh. I kept my mouth shut or whatever. And then I guess at some point I said something about that I didn't like that this was what was happening. And
Really?
Yeah. So I started getting harassed,
What'd they do?
Someone wrote fag on my door or something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And just sort
What
of.
do you mean with what? Like a pen?
Like a Sharpie. Yeah.
Like a permanent Sharpie?
Yeah.
Fag.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I was basically shunned.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that kind of sucked. So I was friends with some of those guys,
Yeah.
but not then. And then I moved off that floor. I moved cross
Because of
campus.
that?
No, I moved cross campus because I became an RA, and
How did you feel about that?
I felt crappy.
Yeah.
I felt lonely, and I can't say I felt scared. I wasn't like afraid of getting somebody assaulting me, but I was lonely and
Because you're just a kid at that point.
yeah, I was 19 or 20.
And did you have at least some allies, some friends in that?
Yeah, I had some friends. Yeah, not on my floor, on other parts of the world. A good friend from.
But not on that floor.
No.
And so when you walk through the hallway,
Just-
you just feel like, okay, I'm the ostracized.
Yeah.
Everyone hates me.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to align with me because they don't want to be attacked as well.
Yeah, I remember that, and it didn't last very long. I think it was the last couple months of.
That would have stressed me out so bad.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
I probably would have gotten in a fight. I probably would have fought someone. I probably would have got drunk and destroyed their shit, or I don't know. Like I don't deal well with stuff like, especially back then.
Yeah. I didn't get in a fight. I didn't do anything. I just sort of survived it, and then it ended, and I moved to another cross campus to another building whenever I got hired
Yeah.
to be an RA. But I was in the middle of this.
Did you want to be an RA partially because of this event?
No, I was already in the midst. In fact, it was because I was taking this class to, you had to take a class to be an RA. And because I was taking this class and there was a great deal of focus on inclusiveness and the D word, diversity. I didn't really care for that word I still don't really like that word.
It's not a widely used word these days.
Yeah,
I understand the premise, and
Yeah.
it had its time, but
Yeah.
we're beyond it now.
Yeah. So that was what they talked about back then. That was so because I was becoming more aware of that stuff, more aware of sexism, racism, homophobia. Those are the big three that we talked about back then. I started feeling more and more uncomfortable with the homophobic attitude on my floor. And at some point, I think I couldn't just be silent about it. It just felt inconsistent to tacitly participate. So I did. No, I don't think I did it in any particularly obnoxious way, but in a way that was scary probably for the homophobes on my floor. And
So this is after the fact that they wrote fag on your door and all that stuff?
it was sort of during a 2-month period. That was one of the things.
So this is after you had been bullied and identified as the enemy, and now you are intervening, you're making a speech.
No, nothing so big as a speech, just some form of objection.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because of the class you were taking with the
yeah,
others.
and that is I mean, I didn't need to take a class to be aware of what was important to me, but it was a formalization of, I really believe in kindness. I just believe in decency. I believe in we should be decent to one another. That's just it. It doesn't really matter who anybody is. And that.
So you were like that even back then?
Oh yeah. That class was a way to formalize that understanding of things, and also learn about the ways in which racism live inside me, and homophobia and sexism live inside me. In effort to kind of confront that in myself, it's just inconsistent to be silent in the face of, the homophobia of a bunch of 20-year-old.
These mostly white guys?
All white guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the young people out there, what Bob is talking about is way before the time that was normal. We're talking late 80s right now.
1988.
And what Bob is talking about in terms of his opposition and activism and allyship, we didn't even have words for that back then.
Yeah.
Because it was so unheard of. I mean, gay people were so oppressed and so denied that when I was, around that time, I'm, 3 or 4 years younger than you.
Right.
If you would have asked me what percentage of people are gay, I would have been like, I don't know, like 0.001%. Because you were so closeted, you were so forced to be closeted that barely anyone ever came forward, if anyone. And it was so unheard of that Liberace, no one in my circle thought he might not be straight. You know what I mean? Or other kinds of characters like that. Like the guy on Match Game, I can't remember his name, but the notion that someone would actually be gay was so far from our awareness because of the oppression, because of the murder, because of the systemic homophobia and heterosexism and bigotry, that at least in mainstream suburban America, it was basically a non-issue. It just didn't exist. It was completely wiped. It's how people I don't know if this is true, but I read on Reddit sometimes that in Russia, they claim that there are no gay people.
Right.
And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing.
Right.
Now in Russia, because of the internet and their awareness of other cultures, they're just in active denial. In the 80s, United States, it was just, if you weren't gay yourself, or you didn't have someone close to you that was gay, it just was not an issue of your life. It was like talking about aliens or something.
Right.
It's like, well, maybe they exist. I don't know. Turns out I had close friends who were gay, and they were closeted, and I wouldn't find out till later.
Yeah, me too.
And so for you to be able to not only know that was wrong, but to stand up to them alone is massive.
Yeah,
I mean, to be able to stand on your own as a white guy, a straight white guy, against a bunch of other straight white guys. Your freshman year in college.
Oh, sophomore, yeah.
Sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
You don't, you're young, you don't really know anyone, and you're trying to survive, and there's no incentive. There's a lot of disadvantages, negative consequences to doing what you did. You could have just been quiet like probably half the other guys on that floor, and just ignored it or something, but you actively pushed back and were one of the good people. And so for young people listening, you might be like, well, of course that's what Bob did, because Bob's a good moral person. And my response to that is, there were a lot of good moral people on Bob's floor who didn't do anything because there was no template, there was no guideline, there was no safety to do what Bob did, but Bob did it anyway. And I didn't know that about you, Bob. I would have figured, even though I respect you greatly, I would never have thought that you would have done something like that. That's what's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, that wasn't a great time. Sexism, though, I don't. Toxic masculinity. That's where we started.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have much of a relationship with it. I learned the word mansplaining from you maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And now I occasionally see it and I'm like, oh, Colleen, did I just go mansplaining on you?
What does she say?
She'll say, yeah, or no, you're all right, or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my observation of you is that you're certainly not a toxic masculine person, meaning that you are trying to establish yourself as dominant, that you are trying to distance yourself from any quote-unquote weakness or feminine thing.
No.
And have never been that way, although I met you in graduate school at Antioch, where toxic masculinity was, although there were probably, it was probably present at times, was not encouraged and not rewarded.
Yeah.
So, but I guess I wouldn't have known what you would have been like before that. I mean, where do you think you got that from? Like, where do you think, what path led you to, at the age of 19, being so different than the 30 other boys on that floor?
I don't know, because when I went home after my second year of college, I started being surprised by seeing the attitude of, racism and homophobia in my folks. And these are not like overtly racist or homophobic people.
They were always like this, but you didn't notice it until you had this awareness.
Yeah. And then I was like, shit, I thought everything I am is just like what you already are, but it turns out that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know where.
Well, and the other thing I'll say about you, and the listeners might also kind of know this about you, is that, I don't know how to say this, Bob, but you're not at the cutting edge of awareness in these areas,
That is a fact.
So you were less on the cutting edge even back then, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So it must have been what you were talking about earlier, which is a value and a personality trait of being ethical and moral and nice and respectful. And when you see that, you're like, okay, I might not know a lot about racism or the experience of gay people in our culture. I'm not up to date on that, but I do know that that's mean and uncalled for and unfair.
Right.
So no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it's where did you get that from?
It's always, I don't even know. I've always been.
Since you were a kid?
Yeah, always.
So you would notice meanness or unkindness because of your dad's abuse?
That's a really interesting question. I think it's an outgrowth of needing to deny self, quite frankly. So
And notice other people's feelings?
Yeah, I think.
But if you really were denying the self, you would go along with the homophobia on your floor because that's what's right. That's the emotional field around you. You know what I mean? So you're extending yourself into people that you don't even know, gay people that are being harmed that aren't even necessarily on your floor.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So it's not quite just deferring to other people's points of view or personalities.
That is also true, yeah.
So I think it is something around justice.
Yeah. It's
not just a denial of self.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. It is true. Yeah. I don't know then. I don't know. I think that I've always been interested in kindness, decency.
Did you have a teacher or a aunt or someone that was like that? Nice, considerate?
No. I don't recall anybody. I mean, I had teachers that I thought were nice people, but I don't recall them as being models for me.
Do you remember an earlier experience where you felt like a group was being crapped on and you're like, hey, maybe like in grade school or something?
I remember when Danny was sucking his thumb and he's getting crapped on by my parents. That wasn't cool. I was in 5th grade. And did I ever tell you this story?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it was awful.
This your younger brother?
Yeah. He used to suck his thumb. And, I don't even know if it's true, but they'd say you get buck teeth if you suck your thumb. Is that even true?
I don't know.
I don't know if it is true.
Yeah.
One of those things that they say. Anyways, they were always, wanting him to stop sucking his thumb. He's a couple, 3 years younger than me. And one day, he was standing, they had him stood up on their bed. He was 7. And they were laying into him. about sucking his thumb.
How old was he, maybe?
7.
Hmm.
I was 10, maybe 11, somewhere in there. And
Abusing him.
yeah. And I remember I was standing in my bedroom listening to that, and it was just, I mean, my brother Danny, a good kid, really good kid. And they were just on him. And I ran into the hallway, and I was scared to death because I did not stand up to my father, ever. And I kind of got weak-kneed, and I fell, like, on my knees, and I yelled at them to leave him alone. And they came after me. She came after me. And I remember she shamed me for intervening. But I like that I did that. It was uncharacteristic of me.
At the time, you liked it.
No, at the time I felt like shit. I mean, yeah, it's Danny, yeah. But it felt awful. And I actually believed the message she gave me, which was basically it was none of my business and I should keep my nose out of it, which is completely untrue. And really, when I think about her, and at least her professed sense of morality, it's kind of backwards. But, you know, the world is made for those not cursed with self-awareness. And
so we could take a guess and say that things like that happened a lot. Maybe that was a poignant moment.
that was a poignant moment. I don't recall ever standing up for him very often.
But, you know, you're young. It's hard to remember things.
Yeah.
What's the chance that that was the only time your parents unfairly went after him?
Oh, yeah, no, it wouldn't be the only time.
Then maybe you at least thought about doing something a lot.
Maybe. It's hard to, yeah, I mean, I don't
know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I wonder if, because there's something different about you. And again, in today's world, you're normal as a 19-year-old sticking up for the oppressed. But during the Reagan era, it was non-existent.
Yeah.
And you doing that is so, and again, like I said, you're not even today at the cutting edge of anti-bigotry.
No, I'm not. No.
I mean, no offense, but as a Seattleite, I find you to be strangely unaware of things, which is probably okay given the fact that you don't have tendencies against that, you know what I mean? But
That's an interesting thing for you to say, strangely unaware.
I've never told you that before.
No.
But there are some times when I'm like, wow, Bob really doesn't know anything about this topic.
That is a fact. I'm sure there's, yeah.
And, you know, while we're on this topic, as a white heterosexual male, you have that privilege to
I do.
avoid.
Yes, I do.
So, but you have this side of yourself that is assisting you and has always been there, which is noticing injustice, even if you don't have a context of really framing it in the larger political, historical landscape.
Yeah, that's definitely a failing.
I think some people would consider it not great.
Yeah.
But you know, we get into some things here. But my point is that the fact that you were doing that at that time, you were, in terms of the bell curve of activism in that university, Penn State, that was probably happening on every floor of the male dorm.
Yeah, no doubt.
You were probably literally one out of 10,000 boys that actually, like I said, there are probably lots of boys that were like, I don't know about this. And probably a lot of gay boys that are just like, I really don't like this.
Yeah.
But you might have been 1 out of 10 or 100,000 boys at the university who actually did something and repeatedly and felt okay about it and didn't give in. You know, like there's something so strange about that for 1987 or whenever this was, that I'm like astounded, because I'm of that same generation, and I wouldn't have done that when I was that age in that context. I would have done that if I felt like I had power. But when you're in a context like that of 30 guys that you barely know and you're just one of many, and you know, if I was in a crowd where I had like 5 or even just a few friends sort of with me on that journey, then I might have, maybe, but not on my own. I would have just been quiet.
Yeah.
I would have just said, it's not my thing. And I might have even laughed at some of the jokes back then. I don't even know. Because I was pretty unaware. And for you to for you to do that and to know so definitively back then, I'm just like, where does it come from? And so I'm just searching for some kind of sense of injustice and extending yourself into oppressed individuals. And so for me, I feel satisfying landing on that story of your brother. It feels like, okay, that's that value, that line in the sand developed in a very poignant way when you were young.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
I don't know. Does that feel connected?
Yeah, that's all consistent. I think if anything, at this age, I'm just aware that, I don't know if it's true for you, but like the things that are important to me, I'm more articulate about, or they're more defined inside me. Like, what would you be willing to die for? I'd probably die for kindness.
Has that ever come up in terms of how that might manifest?
No. I don't know how anybody would die for kindness, but if I had to choose, that'd be the one I think that matters the most to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Well, the listeners love you even more now, Bob.
Oh, well, get a hobby.
No. You don't listen to podcasts. You don't watch YouTube channels. I do. And to find a safe, reliable human on the internet that you can depend on to make you feel validated, human, connected, optimistic is a big deal. And you do that for the listeners.
Well, thank you. You do it all the time.
You do it in spades. Let's take a break. When we get back, I'll answer the question. What do you say, Bob?
Right on.
Okay, so real quick, I'm not like Bob in this way, but in terms of kindness-based interventions, but at an early age, really, I remember being pretty young and being like, I feel like I'm being expected to be a certain way because I'm a boy, and I don't like that. For example, if I really look far back, I had a pink Izod shirt when I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and I remember knowing that I was defying some rule that you're not supposed to wear pink. And I remember feeling, I don't know where it was coming from. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that in my family, I had an older brother and an older sister, and my family wasn't particularly toxic male, although that probably was in there somewhere. I mean, my dad, he grew up in the 40s and 50s, so it's not like he didn't have some of that in him, but he's not particularly that way. And then I also think that because I'm half Japanese, and the racism against Asians, and particularly Japanese people back then, because it wasn't long after World War II, was pretty profound, growing up in an all-white community, that I think I had these inklings as a pretty young kid that the way society sees me has some bullshit elements to it that I don't think are correct, but yeah. All right. Well, that was a weird episode, Bob. Let's adjourn it there. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.